This conference will now be recorded.
All right, welcome back to the Mitchell County Board of Supervisors meeting. This is Tuesday, January 2nd, 2025, 10 o'clock in the morning. Approve the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve.
Jim made a motion, is there a second?
I second it.
Pam seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. This is our Tuesday budget meeting. First up, we have IT budget discussion.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
Hello again, everyone. So I have some numbers for, I'll go down through each line item and then explain what's going to be coming out of those line items. So looking at 41440, I see that, and this was something that I noticed, is that there was a phone line item because we pay by department for the phones. Is that correct? Yep, so that's split up between that. Just as a suggestion, possibly in the future, generally consolidating those phone bills really helps everyone to, generally in IT, so there's not all the different types of money for such a simple charge. I mean, it's just something that's gonna get charged every month. So that was just a thought for the future, but I have that budgeted for my line.
So what you mean is we wouldn't come out of, we wouldn't have a phone bill and roads one and auditor one, it would be just one.
Just smash it all together, and it's a lot easier, you know, from a budgetary standpoint to do it, especially since it's a consistent charge that isn't gonna change.
What's your thought on that, Rachel? Sorry, because you do the budget.
I was fine with that. My only question would be like cell phones, if you still have that per department. But like, I don't think that's a bad thing what he's suggesting.
Would we have to up that amount to?
If you want to do that, we would basically take the phone bills and from every department and add it. We'd have to add that all in there.
In the phone system, would that come out of that?
That's, I think you'll talk about that.
Yep, I will.
Okay.
Then 4240, that's gonna be certain, licensing is gonna be part of that, so let me get my really fancy notes out here. So over the year, I've kind of locked down what the financing looks like on a yearly basis for the department. That wasn't something that we had known before exactly. I'm looking at a total of right at $20,000 for all the licensing we have. That includes any licensing on our networking equipment, as well as the big one is the Office 365 subscriptions. That's what's going to be taking up the majority of those. Majority of that money. I also put a little extra money for if any licenses popped up that I was unaware of, which is certainly a possibility. So just a little buffer there, sorry.
Can you, sometimes I'm a little slow on things.
No, that's fine. I'm sure I'm explaining it wrong.
No, you are.
Okay.
It's just that I just need to know where we're at, and you name the numbers, or what is the verbiage of where we're at? Is it like?
Is that under your dues and memberships or?
Yeah, that's, I guess, what I'm asking.
No, that's under information tech services, computer training services.
Okay.
We're gonna work on these labels a little bit, I think, because they're not how I think a little bit, but I mean, it's just gonna be a labeling difference, mostly for what makes more sense in my head.
So 20,000 of that is your licenses for that.
Correct.
Okay.
Also the phone system is budgeted in there. So I budgeted $10,000 for the phones, just so there would be enough wiggle room depending on what vendor we're gonna end up going with for the phones.
And that was for all of them, correct?
All of them within the courthouse, yes.
Also, so roads or conservation or the services building would not be part of the new phone system?
No, they would, I'm sorry, I meant like over at home health.
Okay.
Or over at the sheriff's office, because they have their own, like, sheriff's office obviously is 911, you know, we don't
Right.
worry about that at all. But like the home health department, they have their own phone system that's separate from our phone system. So I would certainly help them with doing it, but it won't be touched at the same time as the courthouses.
How will phones from we'll say from roads, if theirs is an upgrade, how will it integrate with what we've got? Will it work?
I would upgrade roads,
Okay.
all of those. It's just that the two separate phone systems is what would, be the implementation issue.
Okay.
Obviously, the big plan with that were to bring everybody together under one phone system would be the goal of that. So and there's going to be a little bit of extra money there as well to be able to help with any of the phone things we end up finding out. So I think it gives us enough flexibility to accomplish what we need to do to bring them together if that's the decision to do. And that would be my recommendation. It'll be a little less money if they piggyback too. I mean, it's similar to sharing, any large bill, is that it's gonna be spread out a bit more.
But if someone hasn't upgraded, if they haven't upgraded to the new phone system, the two systems will be able to work together. I mean, you're still gonna be able to transfer calls.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
correct. 40/40 is just dues and fees. Some of that is used for ISIT membership.
And back to the 70.
Oh, sorry, yes, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Back to the 70,000, is that the new server in there also?
No, the new server is gonna be in 63440.
New code, yep, very good, okay.
Then, I mean, dues and memberships is pretty self-explanatory. That's just the one that I could talk about there. So, the 80,634.40, that is the new server that is going to be required for Solutions, our software for the courthouse. There's been some preliminary discussions with Mike, who does the sales for Solutions, estimating a cost not to exceed $65,000. Now that's just, prepare for that to possibly be different. That was just a spitball on his part. But I ended up budgeting for that at $65,000. That'll need to be paid for. That might be a July 1st purchase, actually. It's a vital piece of equipment for the department to function. Any questions on that? Because that was a pretty large amount of money, but it's kind of, you have to do it, is where we're at with it.
Is that installed?
Yes, that's everything totally installed. Oh, say, so 630/640, I generally use that for office supplies. It's just batteries and all that simple kind of stuff.
Okay.
Small electronics, anything that might not fit into technically IT stuff, but I still use on a regular basis, tools, something like that. Then the general basic fund, that provides a really nice cushion if there's any emergencies within the department, any equipment that needs to be purchased quickly, anything possibly in a disaster scenario, so that money's available right away. That's something that is just in my past, I've seen that come through really well to have that extra money in the budget.
Couple of questions if you're ready.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, so looking back at the fiscal year that we're in,
Mhm.
there's a number of items that we're at the halfway point of the fiscal year, 50%. Some of those you're considerably over. The one that, office and computer equipment, you're 641%, so. And you only up to $500, so so what you bought with that 641% being over, is that in some other line item now that's gonna be covering some of that, or?
Yeah, and again, it's the labeling thing really is what that comes down to. So the money is there. I don't remember exactly from last year's budget because I didn't actually budget the money.
Last year that was budgeted, I thought, well, the one we're in, excuse me, last year was at, budgeted at 58,000.
58,000.
And this year's budgeted at 1,000. He's proposing 1,500 for next year, but for this year, you basically used 541% more than the 100% of the 1,000, so I guess that's what I'm just wondering, are those expenditures in some other line item?
Yeah, that's correct. It probably should have been labeled some other line item.
Okay.
But yes, that money is spread out throughout all the different budgets.
Okay,
As what I call that cushion, and that's, again, spread out between the line item numbers.
I know one of the higher percentage ones on there, not sure the line item, that's all of our solutions that we pay out in July for all of the
Yeah.
department stuff too.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
that's
don't
right.
remember exactly which one, but it's a large, probably like 60,000-ish, 50, 60.
And I have a note here that in that 63640, that Shannon, every 5 years, the state will purchase 2 new computers, and then Beaver had at least 1 in-car computer. So that might have been a higher,
Was that last year's stuff that they need budgeted?
yeah.
That could have been, I don't know, if that was a note I made, trying to figure out how much to budget.
I'm
I think
sort of,
last year we had kind of talked about putting all of the computer equipment type stuff, like IT related stuff into the IT budget, so I think that was maybe the list that, no one's really told us what else to add to his budget, so we put together the best that we could, not including any of that stuff, because no one said anything.
I mean, I guess you have a good point, if the department feels they need something in the future,
They need to let him know.
they need to let him know that, so.
And I know that stuff's gonna happen, so that's, again, I can be prepared for that with this budget.
so am I kind of gathering that the 63440 and the 63640, the new equipment and the office and computer equipment have kind of over the last couple of years been somewhat interchanged?
Well, I can't speak to the last couple of years, but certainly this last year.
Okay.
Any other questions?
My main one was just to see there's some that are quite a bit over percent compared to the 50% we should be at, and I just want to make sure that if you're gonna make budget by the end of the year, we're not gonna be way over on something, and so.
No, but the major project that I have for the servers has been paid for. So there's not gonna be any more large charges coming out of any line item, so there'll be enough money.
All right.
Continue. You have anything else?
I guess the rest of it, Rachel helped me with this since it was my first time doing it, but it looks like a total ask of $2,070 and $270,055. A lot of that increase is that new server for the IMBI, for solutions, excuse me.
297, 255.
Yeah.
And we have some revenue coming in?
Yes.
So some is just miscellaneous, but the big chunk there is the Floyd County,
Okay.
link system. We just got that check, I think it was yesterday too, so.
You had to invoice them, or are they just paying it, or how was it
Yeah,
working?
we send them an invoice. I think that's that.
They pay pretty good?
What?
They paid
I
promptly?
think it's like $27.50, $27.50, half, I think. But yeah, they paid it regularly.
Very good.
Any other updates, Ryan?
No, nothing off the top of my head. Rachel's been very helpful to, through this on my first budget, so.
Anyone have any questions?
Good.
Jim,
you.
Kathleen?
Yes, thank you guys.
Thank you. Have a good day. Next up,
I can go last if warm in here.
okay, well, if you wanna go last, we'll let home health go first. She would love to go first.
I forgot my paperwork. I didn't change my budget from last year to this year. I had some, thank you. I had some chemical left over. I had like 65 gallon. And I'm not the guy that just raise it because, you know, I have some left over. I did a little different things this year mechanically, you know, like mowed some things and stuff, so I didn't use as much chemical. And that's why I didn't change it, because I had some left over. So, yeah,
I see on there, though, if I remember right, you haven't spent anything this fiscal year since July on anything. So most of your expenditures for this fiscal year are gonna probably be happening in this.
correct. So the last couple of years, the first year I started, it was a availability problem. Like they had so much in the company and I'm like, I want it. I want my full amount, so I have it and I don't have to wait and wonder, you know? So then the next year, we did it that way again. So then I did that again. I've done it 3 years in a row. I spent it, you know, well, the storage problem, the next thing is the storage problem. You're supposed to have proper storage for chemical and all that stuff. So
Right.
I don't want to have it here. And a pallet of chemical ain't real easy just to move, you know? So I just, if I had some left over, I had it on the shelf, no use bringing it in, and moving it. Like St. Ansgar stored some for me last year. Well, that took part of a day to take a skid loader up there so they could put it on their shelf, do all that stuff, so.
Yeah.
So that's what it is, it's not. And then I figured if I order it in when I need it, I don't need to have the storage expenditure for that, so.
Very good.
Other than that,
Looks good.
I do have a question about for next year's budget. If I was to, maybe this is the wrong place to do it, you just tell me. If I was to write some grants and like the casino grant, they call it, with Worth County.
Yeah.
I gotta have, being I'm not in county, I gotta have 25% of that in cash to pay for it, you know, like if I get approved for it, then they give me so much, do I have to put that in my budget for that year? You know, do I budget it in and say, I need $10,000 to have there if I write a grant and get it, and then I can just go ahead and get it, or do I gotta come back to you guys and ask for it? You know what I mean?
Brent, what are you kind of looking for the budget? Is it equipment or is it?
Well, kinda, yeah, but it just, it's more or less, if you get the grant,
Yep.
then that money's there, and then I can just say, okay, here. And then if I don't use it, I know it comes back to you guys, you know what I'm saying? If I don't get a grant and I don't spend it,
Are you specifically looking for equipment?
well, yeah, sort of, yeah. I didn't want to
Because,
let
well, and that's the thing too. I know that in Worth County, he's written a lot of grants for spray equipment and mowing equipment that we've gotten. The most recent thing we did over there was we wanted to buy a tractor for a mower, which you can kind of split between whether it's roadside management, weed control, but
Right.
we ended up getting half of the money for a tractor and I volunteered the other half out of the secondary roads because we're using it in the roadway anyway, so it's not like it's a big deal. So I think that if you were able to write a grant and get something, as long as I know about it, I think I can budget for, if it's equipment, you know, things like that, I think, because it's gonna be equipment used by you in the right of way,
Right.
as well as probably, depending on what it is, if you're not there, somebody else can use it anyway, so I think that might be a better way to handle it than work through trying to figure out through the general fund, the rural basic fund, or whatever your budget comes out of there, as long as I know about it.
Right,
plan
okay.
for it.
And
That's what I was
typically,
wondering.
when they write those budgets over there, they're pretty specific
Those-
about
Those grants are, yeah.
Yeah.
what is it I need, and like you say, I've got some offsetting, inputs already from the,
Yep.
the roads budget
Okay.
here, and it's for this kind of equipment, and this is why it's,
I would flip it, Rich.
That's what,
It would-
that's great.
It wouldn't matter if, would they look at, if he wrote the grant, it's his own department versus you, and while secondary roads got all that equipment, would they ever question that?
No, they know that, I think even over there, it's still under the umbrella of secondary roads for the most part. In fact, I'm trying to think now if the board over there, I gotta remember now how that worked out over there too, because it seems like everything is fully funded through the secondary roads department over there now.
and so you guys.
It's different over there.
Wood County, you can get the full amount.
Yeah, because we, yeah.
That's why I just wondered.
Right.
Yeah, and we need to continue on that, because to a few entities, that casino money is leaking into Mitchell County more and more.
Yeah, we
And
used it
Sometimes they
for
don't have
the
enough people
playground.
writing grants.
Correct.
project.
So
at State's
I think we should continue applying at least, and, because that's what I was told, that
Oh, yeah.
everybody's kind of gotten what they
Yeah.
wanted, and they're, and so if they need somewhere to spend that money, we just as
It
well
doesn't hurt to try it.
try, absolutely.
I just wasn't sure on
Good
where,
idea.
if I should budget that myself, so the money's sitting there. and I-
Is there a line item in your, I never looked at yours that close, is there an equipment line item in there?
There is, it's.
I just think it's easier to just do the secondary roads.
None that I would have had.
If your budget can handle that, it's
We
just,
can make.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking $5 things. It's not-
Right, I understand,
Yep, no, that's a great
broad
idea.
spectrum, but it was just a question I had, and I just thought of it, otherwise I didn't mean to spring it on Rich here either.
No, that's fine.
so it works perfect, if you can assist with that, it's probably.
Good
the simplest.
communication skills.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe it's possible that Rich can even get a copy of the grant that they wrote up over there at Worth County. Now, it's gonna be a little different, but, or if, so they
They've got
can
their
kind of
form,
get
they've
an
got their
idea.
format.
They've got
for
their format,
grants.
yep.
It's online, I've looked at it,
Yep.
and then it's like,
Yeah,
I'm more of the outdoor, doing the work
Yep.
kind of thing, just writing the stuff is probably, I'm gonna need some help, somebody
Yeah.
overseeing, using the proper verbiage,
We can-
so.
I
Yeah,
have
okay.
one more
Yeah.
question, that you had mentioned this year you did a little more mowing, extra mowing than you did spraying. And do you feel you're gonna try and continue to less spray, or is it just, you don't know?
So, let me put it this way, most 90% of our equipment, most of our equipment stays on the road. You know what I mean, your road grader, well, as soon as you go off the road, you start to have problems, like, we got our track skid loader, Rich let me rent a mower for the front of it, and I did some brush and did all that stuff, well, be going from the bottom of the ditch to the side of the ditch and different stuff, it messed up the tracks on it, well, it's not a cheap tire to put on. So, I mean, once you get off the road, you're gonna run into more of I wouldn't say a construction problem, like you would, you know what I mean, tearing up equipment,
There's more stuff to hit.
more stuff,
Right,
things
it's
in
harder.
the ditch, rocks, and it's just like, okay, so I wouldn't mind having a batwing mower, but you gotta have a tractor to pull it. Are we gonna pop tires in the ditch? Are we gonna drag it over huge rocks that you can't see, So I would like to do more, but it's one of those,
And if there's danger, you need to stay away.
right.
Well, the whole intent, I think, when we created the position, like we did in Worth County too, was to try to hopefully use less chemical in the ditches and try to control more with natural grasses and flowers and
Yeah.
the natural stuff versus spraying all the time. But it takes a long time to get there and a very
So-
short time to mess necessary.
Like that natural grass and stuff, it takes, I think I had a conversation with Mark earlier, it takes about 3 years to get established, where it's really taking hold, but that first 2 years, there's iron weeds and, cause I can't spray it, I can't control it. I mean, so that's probably where I need to mow it, you know? So it's a balance. I personally would like to do more mechanical, like on the wide roads, like say Addison and Walnut and stuff like that, because they're big wide ditches, but I just don't know what's in there.
I hear you there.
And I've been in a washout with a tractor and mower already, and it's like, well, I really didn't mean just to drive into it and, you know, so just stuff like that.
Alright. Any more questions for the weed commissioner? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a great day.
You guys too.
Stay warm.
I will.
Morning again, Rick.
Hello.
All right. The revenue sheet's pretty small. I don't know if if you have the revenue sheet also.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's just based on what we project, the road use tax money, that's something the state gives us for a dollar amount. And then the next number you have is the 30,164, that's money in and money out, that's the money that we pay the towns under 500 population, their share of the jurisdictional transfer money. It's not always, if we take in 30,000, we might be paying out more based because the final payment of the fiscal year doesn't show up until the next fiscal year. So there's a little bit of a difference there. The license and permits, that's kind of, I got a worksheet that I try to follow to find out what we average year to year. And so that's just a number thrown in there that can change, obviously, depending on what goes on. And then the total's on the bottom there for what we're gonna bring in. And then I don't know if it's handwritten on there, I gave this, Rachel gave me the number after I turned this in, but, or the same day. The 1.79 million?
Yes.
That's the rural and general basic transfers that come into the secondary road fund. Now, if you take that number and look at what I estimate for payroll, give or take, they're about equal. So I always figure the property tax money covers the payroll, and that's about all that property tax money does, there. So, on expense side, I don't get any questions on revenues. And the revenues could change, like the fiscal year we're in, I think I had revenues that included some TIF dollars. Well, depending on when the projects take place or how the projects are getting paid for. In the past, we've always used TIF dollars where it was transferred into secondary road fund, we'd spend it. I don't know if we're gearing away from that and I'm turning bills in to the board for them to pay through the TIF fund or not. I don't know how that's gonna work yet, but I know that's how they did it in Worth County here the last few times. Instead of giving it to secondary roads and then spending it, we submit the construction bills to the board or the auditor, whatever, and then they pay it out of a project fund with that TIF money in it. So
It's probably easier for the state more transparent for the state to see that.
right,
That's how it's.
to see what's in and what's out.
Rather than just going into your pot.
Yep.
And then like, where did it go from?
Well, and that was, I think that happened, could have happened a few years ago where when we did all that, we had extra, there could have been extra money in there and it just got put into the urban renewal because all the roads were in the urban renewal, but it was never really probably itemized very well. So, that's the revenue side of things. And what you don't see on the revenue side of things is whatever potential carryover balances come in from the previous year, which is always changing. I have projected, and now that's based on the 2025 budget, based on what I plan on spending there. There could be a $3 million carryover balance into secondary roads for the next fiscal year, but we're halfway through the year and we don't even know what we're gonna hit with winter yet. Not that we've seen a whole lot, but we don't know what spring's gonna do. We've got some projects out there yet that we're trying to finish up, so that $3 million could be less, based on what we're spending now, but that's all kind of in, this budget's like throwing a dart at a dartboard and hoping you hit the right number. So what you'll see, if we go through the expenditures, you see different items. You've got administration and engineering services. Administration is the office staff. Engineering is what we take out for mostly my salary, and you're gonna see that's kind of high, but we've got bridge projects that are coming up that are gonna need consultation on. Some of that money might be carried over. Some of these bills might be coming in from fiscal 25 to fiscal 26 that we won't have closed out from this year yet. Plus, we've got bridge projects that need consultation on for inspection. We're gonna do that federal aid bridge. We're gonna hire that out because we just don't have the staff that's got all the know-how and experience to do everything that they need us to do. And we wanna make sure that if we're gonna do a federal aid project, we hit everything perfectly so they don't start questioning, this is that grant that we had to apply for with the other counties in the state. So with that, bridge inspections, we've got 2 bridges, there's gonna be a little bit more expenses, and that might not be enough depending on how things carry over, but it's where we're headed for now. Bridges and culverts, we're probably gonna try to do, when you look at the histories, it depends, I run averages and I look at averages and kind of feel out what we plan on for the next year. So we probably be doing some more larger culvert replacements with that money there. That 2.5 million, that's usually the rock. A lot of that is at least over $1 million in rock. So you guys got general numbers here that show what the categories are, but I use a smaller detailed thing where I break it down into rock and blading and everything else. That 2.5 million is granular rock, it's labor for spreading rock, it's labor for blading the roads, all that other maintenance kind of thing that we do from day to day in the summertime. So it's a general number in there, but a good chunk of that is rock. And if you look at revenues and say, okay, well, we got property tax at 1.7 million, and now we've got 2.5 million, and the road use tax money was 3.7. Well, there's not a whole lot left to play with when you start looking at budgets. So there's a good thing we've got carryover when we need it. Snow and ice control, that's the winter operations we use at buying the salt, spreading the salt. We don't know what fuel we're going to use, but that's fuel is not included in there, but the overtime and everything else for blading road or plowing snow, everything else is there. Traffic controls, that's signage, anything we do labor-wise for putting up signs and also purchasing signs is in that category. I think we probably look at maybe we spend at least maybe a third of that just in materials for signs. Road clearing, that one's almost kind of dependent on whether we have snow or not. Each year we're not plowing snow, then the snow budget, the salt and snow number gets smaller, but the road clearing, that's brush control and stuff. We're doing a lot of cutting brush and burning brush in the wintertime. So those numbers fluctuate. The good thing is with the DOT categories, they're all in the same category. So if I overextended one under in the other, they balance themselves out when it comes to the DOT budget.
Okay, my question there was, if we're, the last 3 years, we're kind of averaging at that 175.5 range and we drop down,
Yeah,
nearly
I think,
10 grand from
and with the
that.
county budget, I think you guys look at the very bottom dollar at the end. And with the DOT, I've got certain categories that I can't go over 10% in. So I know what categories, if I'm up and down, it's not such a big deal. But if I know I'm getting into a category with the DOT that has maybe it's looking like over 10% overrun just based on, so, but I try to watch that. I use these averages a lot because it kind of tells us that, because there's only so many things we can do in a day, and other than flooding and whatever else, those numbers could vary a little bit. So, you'll see a new equipment. We got $800,000 and $660,000, and that's probably going to be those 2 trucks we just ordered. So there's going to be less to spend there, but we probably will have some carryover in this year's budget from equipment because we haven't purchased everything, depending on when we were going to get trucks and we had to pay for them. We might, some of the trucks, depending when they come in, we might pay for the trucks. If they come in before July, we'll pay for the chassis this fiscal year, which we can cover. But if we, depending when they come in, when they get paid for, I got to keep the money in there so we don't have to amend all the time for certain things. Equipment operations, that's usually the fuels and the oils and all the other stuff that goes along with Just the day-to-day maintenance operations. I don't have that whole breakdown to kind of explain exactly what's all in there. Then there's tools and materials. Those are all the small little hand tools, the wrenches and stuff that get purchased throughout the year, parts and things like that also in there.
So that's up
Yeah.
50,000.
It's up 50,000, but I don't know what parts we're gonna need, and I don't know how much parts are going up versus, a lot of it's parts, filters, tools, and everything else that's kind of all in the mechanic side of things, so it fluctuates. And I was looking at, in previous years, it's a little bit higher, but I don't know what, as things get older, what we're gonna spend there. There's probably a good chance we won't spend all of it in that budget, but we just never know. And then real estate and buildings is, I've got 71,000 in there. That could be a little high, but I think, we've got some building maintenance things that we're gonna try to cover in this next year. Some of that could be, when we pave the truck route around Osage here, I wanna try to bring some of that concrete from the road into the yard a little bit more, so we're not always maintaining the entrance there. And I don't think it's fair to put it on the project cost, even though it's getting paid, but that's farm to market money that I'd rather keep in the farm to market system than pay for our own driveway approach into our facility. So some of that might be taken care of out of that fund there. And then the bigger one is the construction. I couldn't get my construction program to print out, but some of that 1.7 million is carryover because I don't know when our local TIP project paving projects are gonna be constructed. So I put some money in fiscal 25 and I put some money in fiscal 26. That way, if it gets carried over, if the construction gets carried over, we haven't paid for it yet, I don't gotta come in and amend the construction program. So I try to balance that in there to make sure there's money in there. What you see there is expenditures of 8.1 million. And when I get done carrying that 3 million over and everything else, I'm looking at a potential carryover balance of $600,000 for fiscal 27, which is low.
Yeah, it's pretty low.
But a lot of times what we'll see fiscal 25 comes in under budget and that number will pick back up. I'm seeing that repeatedly over and over, just based on when things come in and get paid for and construction projects get paid for. There's just the carryover balance is always kind of there. So I'm not too worried about it, because even if that's the thing, is to make sure that I don't carry over less. And then knowing that I've got maybe a little bit extra in some of these other categories in fiscal 26, if I need to cut, if I know I can't spend the 2.5 that I've got in the roadway stuff, I cut some of that stuff down to make sure I've got money to carry through, but I don't think we'll have that problem. But that, like I said, that carryover is based on a $2 million deposit in TIF. Well, that all depends on if those projects are getting built too, because the construction in there was $2 million, and then there was also $2 million. So what comes in goes out. If you guys pay for the projects there, the 2 million is not coming into my budget, but then the costs aren't coming out of the budget either. So it's almost like those kind of disappear with themselves, and it still carries over at 3 million.
Are you doing plans for those this winter and having them left this spring?
Yeah, the goal is to do the plans this winter and let them hopefully by March.
Local
Yeah,
letting?
we'll do the local letting, that way I don't have to, because there's no way I could meet the DOT's deadlines for putting plans in and having them bid them, so we'll have that whole crazy postings and advertising and all the other stuff to do.
What's that, truck route, thinking of beginning?
Those plans were submitted, that's in a March letting, so it'll be this summer, but I don't know, and I'm still working, because the truck route is constructed within the airport. I had to submit some FAA stuff for them to do studies, because currently even the roadway you need I can't remember what it is. The roadway is 600 feet from the edge of the runway, which is in the glide path of planes. And so when we're there with a dump truck with the top up, we're violating that airspace. It's 1,000 to 1 or whatever that now, it's 100 to 1 glide path, or I can't remember what the actual, but they've gotta do a study and they've gotta know, but I don't think, I kind of explained to them, I said, this is a road that has traffic on it all day, and every day a car goes through there, it's violating the airspace, so I don't know what we're gonna do different, but. And then they wanted me to do a study on another location, like if you had trees that are 80 feet tall and I'm just dumping a truck, what, but we gotta go through that because that's what the DOT says when you go through it in your plans, and they wanna make sure you contacted the FAA if you're within 20,000 feet of a runway. Well, we're 600 feet, so. And of course, I know that based on property tax things and whatever else, however the valuations turn out, what I've projected for rural basic may not be what it is, but I had to have a number to give you guys to the budget, so. Because I don't know how House File 718 is gonna affect us this year. If it is,
Doesn't sound like, Richardson didn't sound like it will this year,
okay.
but the state's not done with it either.
Well, I hope they figure out the mess they've created.
Some of their thoughts are even more strange. But anyway,
That's not surprising.
I do have some questions.
Yes.
We talked about the existing roads that are gonna be paid with the TIF dollars. Bridge South and McIntyre, and one time you said that the 80-20%, we generally have to fund 20% of it, and you said that there's a chance that we're gonna need to fund more than that. So do you have enough money to fund over the 20%?
Well, so that money is gonna be funded through, so the 80% is federal money, and then the other 20% is our bridge money. So it doesn't come out of our local budget at all. So, and what they've estimated right now, the estimated construction costs are less than what we submitted for the federal grant. So I think we'll be okay, but until we get the bid, we don't know where it's at.
Well, you'd said that, and so if we're under, that answers the question. You said originally that we might be over the 20%. You might need some money from us because of that, but.
I don't foresee that right now, and I think they want to use our HBP funds for that instead of trying to go and try to fund it with local money. I think it's cleaner for the DOT and the feds to do that when they've got everything, because all the money will transfer through the state. The federal government will put, well, when the grant comes in and it's kind of a shell game of money, the federal money will come into my bridge funds, but it'll come out of my bridge funds, but it'll come in as it's really kind of a goofy experience, but the money comes in and goes out, and then whatever the federal grant doesn't pay for based on the percentage comes out of the bridge funds. So when I do my state program and budget, I got to try to figure out where my farm to market money is, where my bridge money is, so I can balance that out, because we only get, we get 350,000 a year for a bridge, and most bridges cost more than that to repair. So we can only afford to do about one a year. So if we're lucky. And that's a small structure, not a bridge. I mean, box culverts anymore are running close to that $300,000 mark.
Wow.
So to maybe elaborate on that also, I'll start by saying I'm all for using turbine money, TIF money, when we don't, and rather than you asking the money from the people in taxes. If we can pay for something with the turbine money, I'm all for doing that. And so ideas on projects that we could use turbine money. I know in one of your line items here, right at the very beginning at the start, has to do with bridges and culverts. You got $500,000 in there.
That's a lot of our
That would
local
be,
culvert work and things like that.
but all the roads are in the middle area, and it would be good if you could identify some of those, and that's a large percentage of that could possibly be used for turbine money rather than asking the people for it.
True, and to boot, and because I'm not completely, we've got some time yet to figure out the state program, but we've got other bridges. We're trying to get our what do we call it, the annual overweight, or the I can't think of the word, the oversized overweight permits, the state permits that they want to start issuing. We've got a lot of bridges that probably won't meet those requirements. The state wants us to have every farm to market route available for this permit. And if we don't have every route available for the permit, they want to know why. And it's mostly going to be because some of the bridges can't take it. The bridge south of Osage here, I don't think we'll have that as an all systems permit for overweight, because right now it's limited to one truck. And it's based on how the bridge was designed years ago. And then it was widened, but it just can't take the loads anymore when they wanna up the minimum amount to 12% over what the 80,000 pounds are, you know? So if we wanna repair bridges, we might have to look at, because we don't have enough HBP fund, I mean, to repair that bridge south of town, just to make it probably meet standards for a little while, is gonna cost more than what our bridge funds are gonna be. You can't fix that bridge for $300,000 and then for a small amount of time. So you might have to look at, we use local tip money to, and I think when we went through that whole setup, when we looked at what it was gonna take to renovate the bridge to make it legal again versus just replacing it, yeah, we're gonna spend a little bit more to replace it, but we got an 80-year bridge versus a 20-year bridge for a little bit more money. So our funds can't support, our state and federal bridge money can't cover that cost without some special grant. But right now, the bridge doesn't fall into any grant categories because we've got other bridges that are worse off. So when we go through these grant programs, they look at all these little 20-foot span bridges. Well, this one's a 20-foot span bridge or a 30-foot span bridge, but it still can't take the loads. And they say, well, this meets the requirement. Let's try to put this into a grant. Well, I got a bigger bridge, but it's not dilapidated enough to qualify for the funding. So we've got to, if we want to start helping ourselves, we got to start looking at different ways to fund things.
So do you have some of those in mind that you would be wanting to do?
Well, I mean, it would make sense to try to do something with the bridge south of town because that takes it down to the avenue. However, you can argue there's already a route to the avenue and it's called 218. So should we expend all of our money to get to 218 because it's a shortcut depending on which way you're going? Because you can go east or west out of town and still hit the avenue on other routes. Do we spend the money on ours because it's a shortcut for us? Or, you know, I mean, there's things to ask. I mean, about every cedar bridge on a farm to market route, probably not gonna make the cut.
So I want to talk about Stacyville also, but before I get to that, if we're talking about bridges. We have 152 structures, I believe, that in the county, and then I don't remember exactly how many are embargoed or have oversized, overweight permit.
I'd have to look. I think we're at over a dozen.
Okay.
They're not all on the farm to market system.
So the question is that if, rather than just living with them like that.
Yep.
Why don't we start having a program where we actually maybe do one of those a year to try to eliminate those off?
That's what I try to do is, and when we start seeing posted, but
rather than the funding coming from the state.
Okay.
If we're always just waiting year after year to do that, we have dollars that we could actually start using to start eliminating some of those.
True. Now here's the killer. You start improving all these bridges, then our bridge money comes back down because it's based on square footage of bad bridges. So the more we fix with our own, the less we get from the state, which everybody's got to deal with that. So it's a balance. I think what usually happens when I program things, and this is just not to say local money, but when I look at bridge money, I look at which one's the next in line with bridge money, so we don't have to spend our own money on it. But if we ever want to get ahead, we're going to have to look at that kind of a program.
And I would like to think of that. Yes, look at that. Talk about Stacyville. So the roads west of Stacyville that is going to have to be shaved down, widened, and improved. That on March, that stub.
Yep.
And then also, I don't remember where we're at as far as paving south of Stacyville into town, but there was a question in regards to going through town because of the ADA requirements and everything, and where we're at with that. And those could be possibly considered as far as having certain money paid for some of that rather than the taxpayers.
Right. So I know that I've got, I think, monument from 218 to the south edge of Stacyville, I think is programmed for fiscal 27, if the money's there. And that's where my farm to market and my balance sheets are all trying to work themselves out. I skipped in town because I think when we estimated that for the grant, the in-town work was just about as much money as the 7 miles coming into town. But also the city of Stacyville had to fund their portion of everything outside the 22-foot wide roadway. Because when you're coming in there, you've got curb and gutter, you've got all that other knick-knacky stuff, sidewalks, all the approaches are kind of their baby to take care of. Now, whether I talked to their consultant a while back, and I think they want to try to plan for it a little bit, but I also reminded their consultant too that we've got March Avenue on the west side that I think they want to use as a truck route. Now, remember, the routes in town and through town are farm to market routes, and they really aren't able to say you can't drive a truck through town. But in a better sense, do you need all that traffic coming into town just to go back out of town?
Right.
So that March Avenue Road on the west side would be a good one to improve. To probably lower the cross section a little bit so you can widen it.
Right.
Wide enough to get a decent pavement in there. But again, half of that road is the city of Statesville's because it's a local road, not a farm to market route. So they would technically be on the hook for it unless the board says, hey, look, we'll cover it. But that's not my decision, that's a board decision on it. Because if you want to use TIF for it, then that's some way to handle it. But
You're looking at $750,000, $1 million?
at least, yeah, I was gonna say in that $750,000 to $1 million, depending on when the project takes place, because there's a lot of dirt to move and any reconstruction is gonna cost you a little more than $1 million a mile.
Has the city of Statesville given any ideas of a timeline when they would like to?
I haven't talked to them.
The road is not getting any better.
They want to, and I think when I talk to my tax meeting, we always talk about county stuff, so I'll probably get an indication from the clerk when we talk about it a little bit more. But I know that I told that their consultant, and I don't know if their consultant's kind of working on them for prep projects because they have stuff in town they want to do too. And so I said, we're still a couple of years out, so give the city some time to maybe look at budgeting. But before, when we were gonna do the grant, they were only gonna pay 20% of the 100% of the city work. Well, now that the grant's not there, and I'm still holding out hope that maybe the grant comes through again this year, we can apply for it again, but the way the federal government wrote the grant, it was a rural grant, right? So rural means, in my mind, rural means Iowa, country. Well, they gave all that money to the rural roads in big cities. And then,
Imagine that.
yeah, so, and we couldn't show them that we were lowering our carbon footprint. And I said, well, how can we? We get on the highway and we're not sitting, creating more carbon by sitting at a stoplight. We can't show that we lower our carbon footprint enough to make it matter to those people. So I don't know that the grant will ever come through. Maybe it will, but in the meantime, we're going to start moving on because we can't wait for the grant to come in because the roads aren't getting any better.
Right.
And when I look at Monument Avenue right now, that's a really good candidate to get within the next 2 years before we completely lose it all, to do an overlay on it or a reconstruction.
Yeah, that one needs to be addressed.
So the goal on that one is still to do a 6 or 7 inch concrete overlay because it's wide enough. But we got to do it before we lose it. And even if we can't get into town.
I think we talked about, part of Statesville's portion. I think Mike and I think maybe you were gonna talk with the city if we could get going on it, that their portion and that we could fund their portion and they agreed to pay us back.
The other thing you could do is have and that's usually what you have to do before you do anything within the city limits, even though the farm to market routes technically ours to maintain with our 2080 agreements, they're still, because we give them that part of that $35,000 or whatever every year, that money is supposed to go into their budget to take care of anything outside that 22-foot wide road. Whether or not they do it, I don't think they do, but whatever. So we have to have another 2080 agreement when it comes to construction. And if that 2080 agreement says, hey, look, county's gonna pay for everything, and then we'll have a payment plan for you guys to pay back your portion, that's an option. I know a lot of counties and cities do that kind of thing, but they gotta have an agreement to do that, and then they've gotta be able to figure out how they can fund it.
So there needs to be a conversation.
Yeah. Yep. And I know that they know, at least I've talked to the mayor and the clerk over this last year just on other things and keep indicating we gotta do something soon. So hopefully because they've got, if you try to go east out of town from the old grocery store to the bridge, there is really terrible drainage there. You know, they can't get a culvert deep enough to take the drainage they got in. I mean, so there's a lot of stuff on their end that's gonna cost them a lot of money to get the water to drain, that they aren't prepared for that, I don't think.
And if they didn't do it when the road south station gets done, they'd be missing out on quite an opportunity as compared to having to do it themselves with a separate project.
As far as the paving part goes, yes. But it's almost like its own little animal because you've got so much detail and survey and stuff in there. I mean, the in-town part's almost gonna be a reconstruction just because you gotta take out, I had Kroll come in once, they were cruising through town and they had the core machine and I drilled some cores in the asphalt and it's not very thick at all.
Yeah.
Even when we did the mill and fill, we put 2 inches back, but it might have 4. And I'm surprised it's got that much. I mean, I'm surprised it's held up as well as it has considering how much it doesn't have in it, but
It's a lot of traffic.
it does. And so that whole town is gonna be almost, when we estimated things, we were trying to keep everything within the back of curb and trying to keep, because they spent a lot of money to asphalt their parking and I wanted to kind of keep that. And it's a good elevation standard to meet. They've got the elevations, they've got the grade there already, but from there on out, you gotta kind of rebuild everything to get a good base back underneath it and then get the drainage. So it's almost a remove and replace type of deal, at least to the downtown area. Once you get out of the downtown area, you don't have to worry about the curb and gutter system anymore. And it's almost like a rural section when you leave town. So a good portion of it in the main town I think from the nursing home down to past Bowix is curb and gutter.
Yeah.
And then there's no curb and gutter from the west of town into town, but the water drains that way and it does get into
So
the
it goes
system.
down, yeah.
Same with the east side, everything kind of runs toward the river, but there's no curb and gutter other than it does dump into some
Yeah.
local ditches. So there's a whole lot of drainage and a lot of things to work out in that project. So that's almost its own entity. There's gonna be more money probably in reconstruction costs than probably the paving, or maybe 50-50 when you start thinking about regrading and everything else to make it work. But so in a sense, you're right, the values of having a large paver there already to do the work, but they're almost, the scopes are 2 different scopes. One is just a straight overlay into town, and this one's gonna be, we're gonna dig up the old road, we're gonna put a base in, we gotta get some drainage, we got culverts, we've got curb and gutter and stuff to deal with, so there's a lot more detail in that one, and that's where the city's gonna have to, that's where it's gonna take a consultant with the survey crews and all the design experience they have in a municipal setting to say, look, this is gonna, you've got those fees, and then you've gotta put a plan set together. So whether we do them together or not, I don't know that there's gonna be that much of a cost saving. It's a mile through town. There's 3/4 of a mile at 25 miles an hour. So, yeah. And so those projects I've got programmed out further than just fiscal 26. But when we get towards end of March, when we gotta start doing our state budget and program, we'll have a little bit more detail on what projects we can project out for the next 5 years, the 5-year plan, so.
Yeah.
It's still, right now, even, there's a bridge on a level B road on Valley that keep kicking the can down the road, because I think there's probably more important ones than on a level B gravel road that we need to fix before that one, and it doesn't take the traffic, so it's gotta be local money if we fix it anyway, so.
Sometimes you don't need to kick the can down the road.
True. So we can't use our state or federal bridge money on it anyway because of the traffic count, so it's gotta be local construction.
Any other questions? Because it's 11 o'clock and got home health.
Already?
11 o'clock?
Sorry I spoke so much, but.
Sorry, I asked me, okay, but that's.
You're good. Everybody's good. Thanks for coming.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you.
fun budget hearing down, one to go.
2 more to go.
Still got work.
But not yet, plus then I've got my state ones to do in a couple months.
Thanks, Rich.
Yep, thank you.
Good morning, Laura.
Morning.
Good morning.
I figured while I'm here, I'll pass out, just kind of how we're currently doing on the budget this year. A little worksheet.
Sorry I talked so much and held you up. My apologies.
Huh?
Sorry I talked so much and made you wait over there.
No, I came early. I wasn't due to come till 11 anyway.
Thank you.
So yeah, this is how we're doing this year, so I thought I would just show you guys how we're doing. I can wait until Todd comes back, if you want me to wait.
You go to the restroom?
Sorry.
I didn't want to get started without you. Okay, so any questions on how we're kind of doing currently? That worksheet that I handed out to you. We're sitting really good on our budget. I always like to show the county tax dollars that we're using. We budgeted on using about 326,000, and so far we're only using about 41,000. So if that continues, it'll be about 83,000. So we're sitting really good. I do have a couple amendments. I think I told you guys the last time I was here, but that because of those grants, mainly because of those grants, we're having to, on both expenses and revenues due to that dairy farmer grant.
Oh, yeah.
So, and you'll see it on the budget, which line items I adjusted on those.
Okay.
So I'll start with expenses budget. So I did use the recommendation of the 3.3% that the board recommended for a cost of living raise for the wages. So down through the wages. And then office supplies, I kept that the same.
So you mentioned wages, so just
Yes.
ask the question
Yep.
now, does the budget include the step increases that you're?
Yes, it
gonna
does.
have This year?
Yes, it includes the step increases, and that, so our Board of Health has the annual step increases, which is years 1 through 7, 10, and 15. And they're performance measure based to 0 to 30 cents, so they could get 0, they could get up to 30 cents an
So
hour.
does the board review an individual then and decide that, okay, it's gonna be 10 cents, it's gonna be 30 cents, it's gonna be, is that how that?
So no, it's actually myself.
Okay.
And our clinical manager, that we have like a evaluation sheet that's kind of got a scoring depending on how, how they do, depending on if they get 0 or 30 cents. Mhm. So they started the performance base a couple years ago. In the past, long before me, they had the annual raises. And they were all kind of all over the board, percentages. And I got to have it changed to performance based just because if they're just automatically getting it, I didn't agree with that. So it's not pushing them to do any better. So we changed it to a much lower raise, 0 to 30 cents. And it's totally based on performance. So yeah, that is all included in the wages.
Okay.
So there's no surprises during the year. And I've never had to amend my wages line items, so they're usually pretty accurate. So then on the second page, we have health supplies. I did lower that a little bit, just kind of going based off the years or the previous years, kind of how we're sitting. You know, a lot of my line items are so hard to determine. It fluctuates on what our census is. If our census is really high, clearly our health supplies, medical supplies, therapy expenses, they're all gonna be higher. If our census is low, we're gonna be low. So I kind of look how we're doing the previous year. So I did lower that by 1,000. Emergency preparedness, I did increase that by 3,000, from 10,000 to 13,000, and that's 100% a grant that we get. It's kind of what we're guaranteed. A lot of times we do get a lot more. There's usually extra grants thrown out there, or there's carryover that other counties don't use that they offer. And if we can use it, then we can use it. Clearly this year, it's the dairy farmer. So I do have an amendment of bumping that up by 22,500 because that's, where the whole total grant is 65,000, but as far as like expenses of things, supplies, equipment that we need to purchase, that line item is 22,500. So that's why I went up that much. But so yeah, every year, as you can see, every year has kind of been different for that line item, just because like we had that big IT grant a few years ago. And this year we found out about the dairy farmer grant in October. So I have no idea what's coming down the pipe, if anything is, so. So the personal items and clothing, that's for uniforms for our aides and nurses, that I kept the same. Immunization clinic, that's things for our immunizations, needles, gloves, things like that, so that's 3,000. As you can see, there's 0 under flu vaccinations because we're no longer buying the vaccinations. Now that we're going through VaxCare, we don't have to purchase the vaccine. So that started last year. So we get the vaccine at no cost. There's no rent. Reimbursable service, I did bump that up $2,000. So reimbursable services is mainly our therapy that is covered by insurances, not Medicare. So if we have someone who has Blue Cross Blue Shield or a private insurance and gets therapy, since we do contract out our therapy, that's the line item I pay it out of. So again, that depends on our census and if we even have somebody needing therapy that has insurance. Other, that's just kind of a in and out one. So like the local grants, like writing the Shop on State grant, I will use the other. And so that's what I buy the supplies out of. Nurse liability, so that's we purchased the nurse liability insurance for them. And that has increased to $131 a year. So I increased that a little bit. Official publication, I increased that a little bit. So that's anything in the newspaper, or background checks and things like that. So that did increase a little bit. Postage and mailing, I left that the same. Mileage, I bumped that up a little bit due to the mileage federal rate going up. So that's kind of with all of the, I didn't increase I actually lowered mine just because I clearly in the history, I haven't used as much. And clerical, I left the same. Nursing, I bumped up a little bit. Telephone, I left the same. Then the school, so if we go to any trainings, director, clinical and nursing, I left that all the same. So any like, to pay for the classes that we take. Same with aid training.
So you have not used much of school instruction? I would think that would be something that you would use a lot of as far as instruction for your people or you.
Yeah, so for the nurses, I've used 1105 based on this one.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And so the aid training one, we actually, as you can see, we were over $1,000 the previous years.
There's different one.
There is, I'm sorry, there is different ones for each discipline.
Okay.
And the reason we haven't used any aid one is because we actually changed to a different program, which is a lot cheaper. And you pay per person instead of a flat rate. And we pay that annually, and we pay it in January. So that's why we haven't spent it this year yet, and that's why
So
it's
that
so
one
much
hasn't
lower.
come through yet.
So that one hasn't gone through yet.
I was just looking at one of them, I didn't realize.
Oh, yeah.
More of them. Okay, very good.
Next page, consultant services. I budgeted at 3725. We've actually, it shows that we're at 92%, but we only use that for our accountant to do our cost report. So that's why that one's, and that he kind of bumps up a little every year. So that's why he'll be at 3725 this year. Cleaning and painting, that we haven't used any, but I always have it in there for, just kind of for any little thing that comes up sometimes. We also use it for, the shredding that comes in and does our shredding. Medicare, so that's a hard one. I did increase that one by 20,000. That's the one I had to amend by about 35,000. I increased it. So what this pays for is therapy for our Medicare patients and any medical supplies for our Medicare patients. So just to kind of run over that again, when we have a Medicare patient on, we have to pay for everything, any kind of supplies they need. This year, we have a lot of like wound care people, and wound care supplies are extremely expensive. And so we have to cover that cost. So maybe next year we don't have as many wound cares, and it's not the cost isn't gonna be as much. So that one really fluctuates, as you can kind of see from past years. It's really up and down. And it's hard to determine. Also, our therapy expenses did go up. I think I remember telling you guys this last year, but that it did go up from $75 a visit to $105 a visit. So that was a huge jump. So user memberships, I left that the same. And office computer equipment, I left the same. That's our copier. And then the information technology charges, that is our electronic records, our EMR, yeah, we use Matrix is what we use, so that goes up a little bit every year too, so. And then the rest on the expenses is FICA, IFRS, and insurance. So our expenses did go up a little bit from last year due to wages and just natural other stuff, just the costs are just being more. So. And then on the revenue side.
I have a quick question
Yeah.
on this. The nurse liability insurance, is that if they're like injured in somebody else's home or?
Or it's it covers any liability nurses have if something would happen. It would cover them.
Okay, does that cover your part-timers too?
It does, yeah, every single nurse has it. If something would happen, like a malpractice or something, it would cover.
Okay,
I mean, it's all of our nurses. Every time I hire a nurse, that we pay for that.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so on the revenue side, the other fees, that again is kind of those ones that pass through. So if I get that shop on state grant or everything, that's where it goes in. And we did receive that this year, so. I inactivated a couple of these just because the COVID line items and things like that, we shouldn't need anymore. Elder Bridge revenues, as you can see, that has gone down. Those grants have really decreased, which is a shame. So what we kind of use that for as a refresher. So we have our sliding fee scale for our private pay people. And so those people, depending on their income, they will pay less. So for example, our aid is $60 a month, and our sliding fee scale could go as low as $10 a month. So those lower end people, this will help some of those lower end people and help pay for some of their visits. So it's not people that are on Medicaid, it's the people that pay privately for a personal care aid or a homemaker that can't really afford it, but they need it and they don't qualify for Medicaid. So it's those people in the middle that really need the help. So that gets used up pretty fast. I try to spread it out for the whole year usually helps, anywhere from 5 to 10 people is kind of where it falls. And so, yeah, it's a shame that it keeps going down, and I foresee that continue to happen. Our local public health grant, the LPHS, that is our state grant, so every county gets that. So that's what we use for a lot of what Jessa does gets paid for, reimbursed for her time with this grant, $35,000. So that kind of goes down by like $150 a year. It seems like it slowly goes down. So.
I see that, that's at just only 19%. Does that, if you don't spend that all, does that stay?
That just could be because the state hasn't sent us the checks yet.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we use it every month, and I turn it in, and so sometimes I just to get those checks back from the state. Yep. Community education services, so that I left the same. That's a lot. Jessa does a lot of CPR, first aid, AED training, so that's what that revenue is for. The next, on the top page, on the next page, it's bioterrorism, that's emergency preparedness. So I did the same as I did on the expense side, 13,000, because that's what's guaranteed. So as you can see, I did put in an amendment for that 22.5, just like I did on the expense side. Medicare RN, that's actually what we get for all of our Medicare home health people. That's where that all goes into. And I did increase that a little bit. I feel like that's been coming in pretty good, and I expect that to keep going up. And again, that all depends on our census. As you can kind of look back, it does kind of fluctuate a little bit. So, but I'm hoping because we're doing really good on that this year. So hopefully that continues to go up. The next one down is insurance. So that's all of our commercial insurances, Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, things like that. So that's what that pot of money is for our home health. And so as you can see, I have 0 down for the insurance aid. So usually commercial insurance do not pay for a personal care aid. So that's why I never budget anything in there. Immunization insurance. So since, like we talked about before, our vaccinations have really increased since we started doing the VaxCare, and before VaxCare, we weren't really taking any insurance except for Medicaid and Medicare for flu shots. And so now we provide all vaccines recommended and required for all ages. So this year for this year I had budgeted 5,000 because I had no idea what to expect. And I'm having to amend that up to 30,000, so adding 25,000 on there. So that's been a huge source of revenue that we never really had before, except for our flu shots.
Nice bump.
It is a huge bump.
It is.
It is. So we just scheduled, now that flu shots majority of them are over, we still have some people coming in. We're doing weekly or monthly walk-in clinics, so people can just come in and get vaccinated for any kind of vaccine. So making it more available for them.
So is that mostly where that jump kind of occurs, or is it, that you're able to administer those out in the home as well?
We do a lot in the home.
A lot, yeah.
Yeah, especially
Which is a
flu.
nice service.
It is, yeah. We have a lot of people call in too now that, I can't get out. People that aren't our patients, our home health patients, that will go into the home as
Okay.
well. But yeah, this
That's a
big
nice
bump,
bump.
I think the big bump is we didn't always have all the vaccines on hand. And we couldn't bill their insurance. And so the Part D part is a big boost too, because Part D, they really can just go to the pharmacies. So now that we get a lot of people coming in to get things that Part D covers.
We got a couple coolers just recently, so is that for vaccines to keep them in and
Yeah, so,
you go through vaccines enough that you don't have to worry about expirations? I mean, it works pretty good
yeah,
that way.
so we, well, and with VaxCare, if it expires, we can send it back.
Okay.
Yeah, but we got a bigger fridge, and then a smaller freezer to be able to store all of that. And with that dairy farm grant, that gave us access to be able to do that. So it was just a one door, smaller one. Now we got a double size. So that's gonna be really nice to be able to store, because we have the private, we have our, the flu shot, the VFC and the VFA, for the vaccines for children and vaccines for adults from the state. So we can easily have that separated out. So
It's
really
nice to
nice.
send them back. I didn't know that. I thought,
The ones through VaxCare we can, yeah. So then on the next page, we have immunization I-4. That's $8,000. So that's a separate grant from the state that we always get to help us cover our expenses for immunizations. As far as our salary time, that usually gets used up pretty quick, especially at flu season time, because that's a lot of time is being spent there. So that has been used up already this year. So the next one down is aid, and that's Medicaid. So all of our aid services that get paid by Medicaid, that's what this line item for, and I am leaving it the same as it was last year. It's kind of right on. So that kind of all depends on our census as well. We did get a little bump on how much they pay us from Medicaid. So before July, for a nurse or for an aide, we were getting $66.07. And now they bumped it up to $69.05. A little bit of bump, but it's covering our cost. So that's good, because our cost has gone up. Our cost is $62.78. So either way, it was covering our costs. And our rate is $60 for a private pay aid. So Medicaid does actually pay us more. And I know not all states can say that. So we're fortunate that way. The VA, I did decrease that. We just have our VA numbers are low for our patients. That's something we'd really like to promote more. I don't think VA patients realize that they will cover home health. So
Yeah.
I would like to, because they pay for aid and nurses to come in, and therapy if it's medically needed. So that's something I would like to promote when we get fully staffed.
how would you promote it?
I think probably social media, and I don't know if the newspaper, if that would work too. We really like to go in and talk to the clinics and the hospital and the nursing homes. That's something we haven't been able to do lately, but that's another way to promote it. So.
And our VA director, I don't know if you're
Yes.
in there. Some people my age and older, whatever, might not do the Facebook thing,
Mhm.
so they don't
Yep.
even know that that was
Yes.
happening, but others
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. And, we do get referrals from the VA, directly from the VA. Sometimes we get family members call in or themselves, and then we have to call over to the VA and get the auth. Sometimes that's not ideal. It takes a little bit longer and some hoops to jump through. But when we get them directly from the VA, they give us the auth when they give us the referral. So, but yeah, that's definitely something we need to promote, because there's a lot of people who could use it that don't realize that they can get it paid for.
Is it maybe even a possibility to, attend maybe some of those VA events, or do some sort of a little,
Yeah.
talk at, they've got, all of them have some upcoming events, and.
Do they do a lot of VA, meetings, like
Yeah,
regional
they
meetings?
have, monthly meetings,
Okay.
or, it might be, I think Larry would have a real good indication of what their activities are,
Okay,
that kind of thing.
yeah,
That they might be very interested in having somebody come in and, just say, did you know? Cause,
yeah. And sometimes the VA likes to bring in their own nurses. They have some nurses that they come here. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So I don't know if it kind of depends on their staffing as well, whether they use, they'll still like use our aides, but they sometimes like to use their own nurses, so. But yeah, that's definitely something I would like to
Yeah.
throw out. That's a good idea. I'll
Yeah,
have to look into
That they
that.
don't realize that,
Mhm.
you know, that it, like you say, they don't even realize that it's available to them.
Definitely.
They've always gotten everything through their insurance or that, you know, we've always done it this way. And
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Yep, they'll definitely pay us to do that.
Yeah, we also have that, well, I don't, you guys do that community collaboration. That might be something that, and one of those you could speak briefly on,
Yeah.
that it's available in that room of people.
Yes, there
To
is
get the
one.
word out or flyers to different areas.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay. So jumping down to, so just to explain why, so before we had the VA RN, VA aid, VA therapy, so they used to pay us separate, so we had separate line items for each. They do not, they pay us now, just like they do Medicare, they just pay a lump sum. And so that's why, a few years ago, we created just the one line item, since that's how they're paying it. So just to explain that a little bit. So flu vaccine, I still do separate the revenues for the vaccine, so we can kind of see how much is coming in just for flu vaccines versus the other vaccines. So I did 25,000, the same as last year. I know it shows at 96%, but majority of our revenue is coming in for the flu shot. We still have some people coming in, but majority are done. So the home health Title 19, so I believe this is for the nurses. It doesn't say nurse, but it's for nursing, 160,000. So the Medicaid payments for nursing were 140.90, and they went up to 152.49. So that was kind of a bigger jump. So that makes a difference when we see them multiple times a month. And then therapy, I did decrease on that. This one fluctuates. It, it depends on if we have therapy patients that need, or Medicaid patients that need therapy. So I did decrease that because we haven't had too many this year that have needed it. Sometimes if they have a skilled need and they're homebound, we will switch them over to Medicare, because you have to be homebound for Medicare to cover those services. Or Medicaid, you do not have to be, you don't have to be homebound, so. The next page, insurance reimbursement for physical therapy. So this is the commercial insurances like Blue Cross Blue Shield. I did increase that. So again, this fluctuates on what the need is for the year. So I did increase it since the need is higher right now. The next one is nursing services for private pay. I increased that a little bit. That again, it fluctuates. We could have, next month, we could have 10 admissions on full fee private pay people, and then the next month, we discharge a bunch. So it really depends. So, but I did increase it since it's kind of been consistent the last few years, being up there, 27,000. And then the aid, I kept it the same. That's been about right on. So I didn't feel the need to increase that. And just a heads up, we are going to be talking about rates at the next Board of Health meeting. I think I talked to you guys last update that our costs have gone up. So we are definitely going to look at that. So that might change things on the private pay, to increase that a little bit. And I'll probably adjust the sliding fee scale to have it with the line up with poverty guidelines. And then the next one is immunization clinic private pay. So that's anybody who maybe doesn't have insurance or we go out to the Mennonite community and give vaccines, and they always pay us. We do a $10 vaccine rate, but we can't make them pay for it. And so it's free vaccine. We don't have to pay for the vaccine. It's just they're paying for the administration. And so they pay us $10 a vaccine that we go out.
Are they good at paying?
What?
Are they good at paying?
Yeah, they're very good at paying. They are. So I left that the same. And then also anybody that comes in for VFC, the vaccines for children, they bring their children that don't have insurance or underinsured, they also pay $10 a vaccine. So that's what that always goes through. So that's the revenue side. So our revenues did go up a little bit, I think it went up about 6,500, so. So I had some additions, but I did have to decrease some due to some grants lowering, so. Did you guys have any questions on anything?
I just, on the private pay, you answered the Mennonite part of it, but, how are they billed or do they pay when you're at their house?
They pay when we're at their house.
They do?
Yep.
And everybody's pretty good about it?
They're very good. They pay very well. Sometimes they put donations, some over, but yeah, no, that's never an issue. And then our time to go out and our mileage, that's all paid for by that I-Port grant. So, until it's available, like I said, we run out, so. But this year we have that dairy farmer that is helping pay for some of that too, so it is covered by the grant, by other grants. So.
Any more questions for Lauren?
Pam, on your board. You have
I did
her
see
email
that.
address?
Yes.
What?
You have her email address? or-
Yeah, Rachel emailed us and I sent her the next meeting
The
date,
agenda for February.
February 14th. Yes. All right, thank you very much.
Thank
Oh,
you.
Thank you.
Expenditure.
Oh.
improvement?
Yes,
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Oh,
sorry about that.
great.
So our health improvement fund, make sure I got the right one. Okay, so the expenses, I did exactly what I did last year for the most part. I did increase the nursing equipment, just in case if there's anything that we need. So this fund is kind of used for, majority of it is used for any patients or staff, if anything is, if a patient can't pay for something, if they don't have the means for something, that's what this whole thing was kind of started for back in the day. And so that's kind of what we use it for. And then any other, health supplies, public education, things like that. I don't use it too often, but it's there if I need it. And then on the revenue side, it's so hard. So the interest, I put that in there, I kind of base it off of what we're getting the last couple of years. And I just put we haven't received donations in a while. So, but I put it in there just in case. So it's hard to judge for revenue when it's not guaranteed, so.
Right.
Any questions on that? All right,
all right,
feel free to call me with any other questions.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Yes,
Thank
you
you.
too.
All right, on to supervisor budget.
Did you put this together, Mark, or?
Yep.
Okay, you want to explain it then, please?
Pretty much went down through all the other ones from years before. Wages went up, FICA.
Okay, I got two questions. One would be the mileage, meals, and lodging. That got lowered by $2,000. Last year when I did the budget, when I did this, I decreased it down to the 12,000. And the reason being, it used to be 15.5. There was a large amount of mileage that was being used. And if 5 supervisors were gonna use the same amount of mileage at the rate that it was happening, we were gonna be $10,000 over budget in just that line item.
Just that line item.
So I lowered it, I explained it last year. I explained that same thing, hoping that it would actually maybe go down a little bit. It did not go down. It still got used pretty aggressively. I'm very nervous at lowering it even anymore. I personally think it should at least stay at the 12 or at least stay at the same. That's my thought. If 10,000, it only means, $200 per, what would that be? Can't do the math in my head, but it just seems odd to be lowering it even more, but that's a thought. And then the other one in regards to school of instruction, I don't really know why we lowered it to $500 from 2,000. Yeah, it hasn't been used a lot in the past, but right now there's 3 of us that are gonna be going to the ISAC
Yeah.
conference at 2.25.
Yeah, that's my concern.
So, I mean, we're over. We would be
We're already over
already,
the
so,
5 mark.
so I don't know why that's being lowered like that. If 5 of us went to 2 conferences a year, which I don't foresee 5 of us probably going to 2 conferences per year, but if we did, my math, that'd be like $2,500. 5 of us should at least be able to go to 1 conference a year if we wanted to. So I think it should stay at the 2,000.
Yeah.
Those are my 2 comments about.
That was my concern on the school of instruction, just because I knew the cost of the one in January.
And I might be a late
Yeah.
sign up for that one too, so we could have 4 of us there.
Yeah.
I can't determine mine
Right.
unless we have good weather and then
Right.
stay home. And help out with the kids, so.
It should be open to supervisors, because, I mean, those things are for educational purposes for us.
Yeah.
And to limit it that we don't have enough money to send you is really not good in my mind.
So the board proceedings, the 16,000, can someone shed some light on?
Rachel, can
We have to publish in 2 newspapers, so every week meeting, it gets posted in the EJ and the Mitchell County Press News. And
Okay.
it adds up really fast.
The publishing of the proceedings is what you're
And so
talking
then
about there.
like, the big ones are budgets and then budget amendments, because they take up a lot more space in there too.
Yeah.
So sometimes you can't plan for things, obviously, but when we end up having to there's a couple of years where we did like a budget amendment in May and then in June. And so then it's like, I don't know, $400 or something.
Right.
So it adds
Right,
up
because
fast.
you're talking a page.
So you wanna up the miles back up to 12,000 and then the school instruction back up to 2,000?
That's what I would like to do.
And office supplies. You've been kind of buying lately, so do you have an estimate of how much you've spent the last?
Not in my
6
head, I
months?
don't know, but, we could keep it at the 7, and then, we're gonna have to crunch all these numbers from everything that Rachel gives us after she gets all of this stuff. And if we're running into problems, then there's something then maybe we need to look at our individual budgets along with everybody else's as far as, I mean, we can cut line items in ours specifically. We can't cut a line item out of home health specifically. We can decrease their overall budget. I'm just picking on home health. But as far as ours, if we're having trouble, we could say, well, I guess we do have to lower a specific line item in ours, so we could keep it at the 7, but we have not, in history does not show that we have used a lot of that either. What's everybody else think?
500 is probably just fine.
Yeah.
What's the Metro County industrial growth? Office supplies?
No idea. No, and doesn't look like it's been used for, we could probably make that one inactive.
Yeah, I would say make that inactive.
The other ones that were listed as inactive, Rachel, are we going to, get rid of them, or are they just inactive? Is that-
They will just stay inactive. We can move them to dead after they haven't been active for it's either 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
But we can't delete them because then we lose all the history that's
Right.
related to that line item.
All right.
Yeah, so they just gotta stay in there.
Yep.
Stay.
And on a
Just
couple of the
viewing
reports, I forgot to click the don't print inactive accounts, so that's why they were in a couple of them. Yeah,
Okay,
normally you wouldn't see them.
I see.
Okay.
In
So-
regards, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna ask, so the telephone, is that, you know, if you're reimbursing people for the use of their cell phone, or is that our portion of the allocated telephone expenses
Both
for
of
the
them.
courthouse?
So that'll be your guys' cell phones and then if you claim them, and then your phones in here.
Okay, so and that's the line item that we're thinking of just pulling out and looping into IT, is that correct? The telephone charges, isn't that what we talked about earlier,
Yes.
or was discussed? Okay,
Would it be just the hardwired telephones, or would it be the cell phones also?
the cell phone one would have to stay.
I would think it's up to you guys, but I think that you should claim the cell phone in the department it's being used.
That's what I would think.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
So there would still be a telephone
Still,
line
yeah.
item for everybody, for the cell phone part of it, but
And
the
then
hardwire is,
here's a little twist. So if you were to switch to, I feel like we're probably gonna upgrade our phones at some point. If you go to a system similar to the one that we sat in on, where it's your physical phone, your desktop, and an app through your phone, where no one is no longer getting your phone number, do stipends still happen? On a cell phone then?
No.
I mean, sheriff's office is different because their phone system is completely different, so like they would still get one, but it's just a question.
I don't think it would, because if you're getting your phones transferred to you on your phone.
I don't know. We're still
Aren't you
using
getting your
cell
phones
phone.
transferred to you now?
No.
It just lets you know that you're getting a phone call.
yeah, you
Yeah.
can invest.
Okay.
But
Haven't
the-
gotten that far into it yet, as you can
The
tell.
thought on that is that, okay, so
Yeah,
the-
we probably still.
I have my cell phone because I need to have it so that people can get a hold of me. Well, let's just talk about Merlin or somebody that they actually have to have their cell phone in order to be contacted. But if it's going through the phone system is contacting. I don't know.
See, that would be a hard one, because, yeah, you're.
It just rolls directly to
And
you,
I feel like he
rolling
might be a
right.
different one. because
and
of
it
his
uses
job.
this number, doesn't use your
Yeah,
cell phone
maybe
number.
that was a bad example,
No,
but I'm just
but-
trying to think
But
of.
yeah,
Where he physically needs it 'cause he's constantly traveling. Where the rest of us, I mean, I know you don't take a phone stipend, I don't take a phone stipend. I could probably get 10 to 15 calls every day on my cell phone that are not personal calls. But I have my cell phone anyways, because that's just how we live nowadays, like we don't have a home phone.
Well, Harlan won't have to do that because the county has a cell phone for the secondary roads.
And that might have been a bad example on my part, I was just trying to.
So-
just the function is entirely different in that it just automatically rolls right to your phone.
So use Ben as an example, he is the sole contact for every single vendor in the shop. They don't call the county shop, they call his cell phone to get all the parts. So he has to have his phone all the time.
And so thinking of that, the shop has its own number. So that's for everybody in the shop, or basically, where we have individual phones out there that, for me, that's the phone for people to contact me, it's that one there, it's not this one.
Right.
So I don't think you would pay us, I don't think I would be eligible to get a stipend because that's my contact information there.
Well, and if it's rolling directly to your cell phone, you know, the beauty about that is, as people change and move, you know, rather than updating every, you know, all you need to do is update the end number.
Yeah.
And there's some stability and sustainability to that system, maybe more so than what, you know,
And they're
what you
not
have
getting
now,
your,
but,
and they're not getting your personal phone number
Correct.
by rolling it.
correct, yeah.
I still think you're gonna get the complaint that you're still using your cell phone for work. Even, you know, with the numbers rolling from the courthouse,
Mhm.
and I understand your number's not going out there, but when my phone rings, I'm gonna pick it up and answer it, and then, but I might not know if it's county work or not county work.
Right, in that
So
situation,
You're still, and I don't take a stipend either, so what I'm saying is,
I wasn't,
how much complaining do you wanna go with people saying, well, no, I don't wanna have it go to my phone quick, so I still get this stipend, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's just a decision that we'll probably have to make.
Yeah, once we figure out the.
I mean, I don't,
Not to be sneaky, but like, we could all probably claim our phones, right? I could get, what, $30 for my phone a month?
Yep.
My phone bill's $25 a month, so now I'm making money from the county. But, you know, you aren't gonna go ask everyone how much you pay for your phone, like to verify, but I don't know, I think it's a talking topic at least about.
yeah, and I'm okay either way, I totally get it. I guess I'm looking at
maybe more
we have
outside
100
this
people in
room
the
than
county that get a
other
stipend,
people that are on the phone stipend situation.
or, you know, just
Well,
a
you-
rough
Is
number.
that just
You
us?
would, I mean, I don't know how they'll
Other
do it,
people
but
that are on the
I know
phone
like public
stipend
health, all of them have
situation.
their phones, because that's how people caught.
Yeah, yeah, so,
Which
you know,
is
that's
would
good that
super
he's
help
thinking
them,
about,
so
you know,
normal people don't have their personal cell phones. I think that's kind of a bad thing, but, otherwise it's probably just like one per department in this side of this building, except for you guys.
You know, doesn't home health get different amounts for their cell phones?
Yeah, so
Depends
it's
on
by
how much they
like
use it.
nurse, I don't wanna speak correctly, but I think there's like $30, $15, or $10.
Just let's throw this question out, and you just made a good example of how much you pay, and then it's the way it is. In 5 years, will we just take a stipend away because that's all there is cell phones? I mean, I don't know, I'm just,
yeah,
you know, because it's, who's got a home, you know, look in the phone book and,
yeah.
but,
I don't.
I used to have it because it moved to the hog building, but
okay, let's go
now it's
away
just
from
for the
that.
elderly aunt.
With the number of people that have already talked on this school of instruction, I'm in favor of going back, because we're already gonna spend a third of 2,000.
I agree.
Yeah.
If everybody else would agree.
I agree.
And,
Yeah.
yep, I would put that back.
And you're gonna put the meals lodging back up to 12?
I would like that.
And I can see why you kind of bumped it back down some the last couple of years. There wasn't a lot. And even in 23, you weren't that very far from it, so.
What's the board want to do on that one? Are we changing it, or are we keeping it the same, or what are we doing?
On the mileage, meals and lodging?
Yeah, what are we gonna do with that?
Well, do you make the reasonability that if you have more people attending some school of instruction, you're gonna have an increase in mileage?
We'll probably be up into the probably 4,500 after
This year?
all four of us, if we
Yeah.
do go in miles, lodging.
And Mark was planning on going to one in February, I think, where you're, yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. And like you say, if we have to go back through and revisit, we'll go back and revisit it.
Yeah.
If we need to cut.
February is gonna be in this year's budget.
Yeah, yep, in the 1 year, yeah,
We're now-
in the one we're in, but that's what I'm saying is that one will, of course, it's not gonna go up to that.
Right, so there's a meeting this month, there's a meeting next month
Yep.
we all could go to.
Yeah.
You'll have your meetings that are down south that you'll have to.
But that's in this year's budget, not next year's.
I
Right.
know, but just saying, we could all.
So
do the
being at the
same.
21% right now is maybe not indicative of
Correct.
this year's budget. Is that what you're saying, Mark? Is that
Because all these expenses are gonna be in
Right.
this year's budget, not the one.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
So-
we're
Yeah,
actually at the end of the month, end of this month, we're at 37%. It's more than the 21, we're at 37%. And in this last month, there was, almost, $1,900 more taken out of that.
Yeah.
In the month.
We're just trying to explain that we still have all this stuff left over for this year, that next year we could all potentially do the same thing, so if we bumped it down, we could lose it, but again, we can always come back and readjust, so I think we should just leave it at the 12 for right now, and if we have to lower it, we can.
Just a little off topic about office supplies, but if people want to put together a list that they think that we need for office supplies and trying to get the Staples tax exempt thing, I need to work on that. And then somebody can place an order. I will, or if somebody else wants to, that's fine, but we'll place an order for some office supplies, but we know what people think we need, so just kind of put together a list and we can do that.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns about our budget?
Briefly, talked with Rich about it, had to do with the culverts, I mentioned the culverts, so about $500,000 in culverts. I've said this before, but maybe you don't know. So the 152 structures that we've got in the county are structured by the state is defined as something that has a 20-foot span or more. And if it's a culvert, and you have multiple culverts, you do the diameter of each culvert, and if it adds up to 20 feet or more, it's considered a structure. Anything under 20 feet, and we get paid for structures from the state. Anything under 20 feet is not considered a structure by them, and that's on our dime. We have to fix those. There are a hell of a lot more non-structures in the county than the 152 that are considered state structures,
Yes,
and we have to fix all of them.
yes.
So when Rich just has $500,000 in there to fix non-structures, that's I guess how I'll term them that. We have other funding sources rather than asking the people to be fixing that. We can use turbine dollars to be upgrading a lot of the structures that we have hundreds of them in the county. And then also when he talks about that bridge, it's on Indigo that's been forever not being fixed and kicking the can down the road. We can fix that stuff. So it's just, I'm not asking for a decision here. I'm just saying there is money that we can do to improve things and it needs to be used.
So now when you work on that budget now, because, we're nearly at the end of that deal, then you kick that out along with the TIF contracts and what's coming in.
What do you mean TIF contract?
So in other words, the payments that are coming in, that are budgeted to come in,
So that's a big discussion. I'll stop you quick.
okay,
We have 4.5 TIF revenue coming in based on valuations and 6.6 in payments.
It's because we have some loans out. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I haven't figured out what our carryover balance is gonna be this current year, but it may or may not be an issue. So, yeah. But yes, so I need to talk with Ryan to make sure my laptop works. I usually bring that down and we can look at what the fund balances are. I have everything entered. The big thing I'm waiting on is conservation, but they have to wait till after their meeting tonight. So that I can get that entered tomorrow before I come down for the 90 days.
All right, any more discussion? No? No?
Good.
Meeting adjourned at 11:55.